All right, welcome back. Once again, thanks, Coach Pearce. I wanted to turn now to Coach Whitman. I wanted to ask you, about him. I know he was a big influence to you as a grown man and a coach. He was a big influence on me. Just his style and the way he did things, way he approached kids. So, I wanted to give you just a little bit, talk about him, what he meant to your development, if he's influenced your coaching style, philosophy, and those things.
Yeah, Coach Whitman was he was my favorite coach. We were just talking just a second ago about it, but he was my favorite coach and a big reason and what I would say I've tried taking from him, one of the biggest things I've tried taking from him is how he really built relationships with the kids. And he has a lot of things that I don't have: the humor, the craziness, I could use a lot of adjectives, but they're probably not appropriate for this. But he meant everything to me as a coach, and just looking back on it, I wish I could have coached with him, but to me the biggest thing is the relationships and how he was able to really bond. And it's a little different, when you're running a basketball team, you got 15 kids on the 12, 15 kids on the varsity, and then the same thing on the JV and the freshmen, and it's a little bit tougher to build really good relationships with all 50 kids in your program. But what he did is he had two or three quarterbacks, and he was able to really take those guys and mold them exactly how he wanted. And I've tried, my best to emulate that, and especially with our point guards. And I think it's pretty similar in the fact that the quarterback and the point guard are the leaders of the team. And so I find myself really pulling those point guards aside and trying to build that relationship and foster it as far as that stuff goes. But as far as Coach Whitman, I mean, we could talk all day on what he means to me and what he's done for me. I'll never forget all the meetings and him going through all the intricate details of how to have success. And one thing about Whitman is you knew when it was time to be serious, when it was film time, when it was practice time, when it was game time. But the thing about him is he knew how to have a good time. And so anytime all that was over, he was joking with you. He was pulling you aside. He was having conversations. He was teaching life lessons. And those are the things that I try to take with me. I guess I could, like I said, I could talk all day. If you have specific questions, I could probably answer, but those are the things that kind of stand out to me.
So would you say he was more of a leadership coach than a quarterback coach?
I'd say it's probably 50-50. I think he taught you some good things to do in life, and he'd teach you some things that's like, ooh, Coach Witt, you can't do that. Teach you some things that you're probably not supposed to do. But leadership, football, classroom, all the above. I could tell you story after story about him, but one thing that that really stands out to me with him is he taught me, when it's time to work, it's time to work. And I just remember there was one of the receivers was having a bad day one day, and he'd just broken up with his girlfriend, and he's out there pouting. And Coach Whitman had a way of just getting what he needed out of the guys, but at the same time putting his arm around them and understanding. The guy was going through a tough time, but I just remember him saying, this is your time on the football field to forget about that stuff. And then as soon as you get off, you can go back to real life. But this, and I think we can use that stuff in our own lives. There's certain times where we got to lock in and concentrate. And there's certain times that we can grieve or we can laugh and have fun and joke around. And Whitman was the man.
I think what was special about him was what you mentioned, how he could separate the game from life. And, when you were in those lines, he was all business. But whenever you got out of him, he could just put his arm around you and make you feel like the most important person, in the world at that moment. And that's what, more than all the coaching he did, I think that's what was special about him. Do you have a favorite greatest story or something about Coach Whitman, that you could tell?
There's a couple that come to my mind, but we'll have to share those another off air. But you know, I could tell a bunch of stories. The one that sticks out to me is I used to not be a morning person, and I am now, but kind of by force with these dang kids running around. But I remember we used to have workouts in the impact and at 6:30 in the morning, and he would tell us, he would get all the quarterbacks up there, and we're going through our footwork drills and our throwing and all that kind of stuff. But no crazy story, but just the discipline that he helped instill in me. And like we were talking about, my dad taught me all kinds of stuff about life in general, sports, life, all the above. But Whitman was there to reinforce all that stuff. And I remember him, taking the time. One of the big things for me was arm strength. That's what I needed to work on. And I remember him when I was getting ready to go off to Tulsa. Like, he spent, and I was out of his arms. I wasn't going to be able to help his program anymore. But of course, he took me under his wing, and he was going to do all he could to help me have success. And that meant a lot to me. Just the hours that he put in outside of the time that I was under his watch.
I'm sure your players probably feel a lot that way about you as well. So I want to talk a little bit about, your first 3 years at Wiley. You served as the varsity assistant coach under David Black. So we actually shared the same seat at different times. So just want you to take a few minutes to talk about, first your relationship with Coach Black, and then, what were you doing in those 3 years to prepare yourself for what's now become, the next 6 years of leading that program?
Right. Good question. So Coach Black was a really good mentor to me. And one thing he allowed me to do and he was winding down his career at that point. He knew he didn't have a whole lot of years left in him. And I think what he was wanting to do was he was trying to groom me, and I appreciate him for it. He was trying to groom me to be the next head coach. And so everything that he did, as far as, stuff that I wouldn't have known, all the paperwork, all the things that it takes off of the court to be successful, he did that. But talking about the relationship, I mean, Coach Black's a funny guy. He, when practice time and game time comes around, he's going to be serious, and he wants to win and all that kind of stuff. Just like we talked about with Coach Witt. But off the court, he's got his Bubba teeth. He's got his happy pills that he takes. And I got a great relationship with Coach Black, and still talk to him to this day. He's substituting every so often up there at Wiley High School, so I get a chance to see him. But he helped me, and again, I thank him for allowing me to do what I was able to do those last 3 years of his. While we were coaching together, he let me a lot of times run the defense, call stuff on offense, run our practices, and it helped me really prepare me to be where I am today.
Well, like I said, we shared that assistant spot with Coach Black, so we have a lot of the same experiences with it. I would agree with you. One thing I owe to him as someone I worked for was he gave me a chance to coach, where a lot of head coaches don't give their assistants leeway to coach, and that's the only way we learn. I had several mentors that gave me those opportunities, and so, so other than, learning all the paperwork and things of that nature, were you doing anything in your mind as far as preparing yourself specifically for the Wiley, position? Coach Black and I are like brothers practically, and I know there was no other person that he wanted to take over that program than yourself. So what, you mentioned you didn't really look at getting that job. You had hoped you would get it someday, possibly. But were you doing anything at all to prepare to be the head coach of Wiley?
Yeah. So again, I thank Coach Black for helping push me towards that spot. I would have hoped I would have been able to get that spot, but I just remember when his time was up, him, going to our athletic directors and helping push me into that spot and just telling them that I would be the right person for it. So again, I'm super indebted to him for helping me with that. But like most coaches or in any sort of leadership position, anybody that's trying to move up the ranks, I think they're always thinking about how would I do this, how would I do that, and that was one thing that ever since I've been young, I've been wanting to be a coach. And it started off I wanted to be a college coach, and then I turned to the high school side of things. But before I got that my first head coaching job there at Wiley High School, I'd been an assistant for I guess it was about 8 years, and I'd always tried taking things from all the coaches I worked with, whether it was X's and O's or culture and all the above. So yeah, I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I took bits and pieces from each one of the guys that I coached with, and again, I think everybody's had a piece from Coach Black to Coach Rowland to Sam Walker to Jim Sagona. I think everybody's had an influence on me to be where I am.
Well, I think it's big of you and shows your leadership that you show so much gratitude to those people that help get you to where you're at. Says a lot about you. So in this last thing for this segment, I wanted to talk a little bit about assistant coaches, what you look for in them. I know one of your early hires was Donrell Jordan, which was a high school classmate of yours. So just talk a little bit about leaning on your assistants and how important they are.
Yeah, I've been blessed. I've been super lucky to have, you know, first off, not a lot of turnover. I think that's huge. And running any kind of program business, you want as much um, what's the word I'm looking for? You want them. What are you saying?
Continuity.
That's the word I'm looking for. Appreciate it. So you want as much continuity as you can, and I've been lucky to have that. And I think one of the it's not a big thing, but one of the things that is the X's and O's and the basketball side of things. To me, that's kind of secondary. I'd rather have somebody who I can trust, who's loyal, who's going to work hard, and who's going to be about the Wiley Pirates. And Donrell instilled all of that stuff. He was going to work hard. He was going to do everything that it took to be successful. And to me, that's more important. I feel like we can teach the X's and O's. We can teach about what we do, but you can't necessarily teach somebody how to be loyal. And I never forget when Coach Sagona gave me my first job at Collin County. That was what he told me. He said, I'll teach you all about how we run things, but the main thing that you got to be is loyal. And he said, if you can do that, then I'll give you this job. And so I've taken that with me, and I feel like it's very important. Like, you need people on your side who are going to have your back through thick and through thin.
Yeah, so I think that's a very important message to any, middle school or younger coaches that are looking to be assistant coaches. It's pretty simple. Just be loyal, and they'll teach you what else you need. But I think loyalty and trust also was my biggest things I looked for. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about your team's identity, talk a little bit about this season, and then we'll wrap it up. So we're going to take a quick break.